I've interviewed people like Pulitzer Prize winner of Dark Alliance, Gary Webb. He was about to come out with more information. I talked to him about a month before he was shot twice in the back of the head. The police in California ruled it was a suicide. And he'd been telling folks that people have been breaking into his house. I, of course, have interviewed Sela Castillo, one of Gary Webb's main sources, who was the top DEA agent in Central South America and Mexico for more than a decade, an Army sniper from Vietnam. Before first he was an Army sniper, then he was, Border Patrol, then he was DEA. And he came on my show 6 years ago, again, 5, 4, 3, 2, right to 2 years ago, when the ATF shut him up for a couple shotguns, saying they were illegal, and put him in jail because he was making the rounds dealing with the ATF. And he was saying at the time, that's why he's in prison, he was saying at the time that he'd been approached. This is as Calderon was about to be elected, and he said Calderon would steal the election, as he did. And international groups that watched the election said clearly he stole most of the states in Mexico. He said that there would be a huge drug war in Mexico, that Mexico was going to be collapsed because the CIA in Fort Benning, Georgia, and now that's now in mainstream news, was funding Los Zetas, giving them automatic weapons, grenade launchers, you name it, and that Los Zetas, that, quote, was going to defect from the U.S. government and the Mexican government, was really working with the U.S. and Mexican government. Once Calderon got in was the plan. That's why as soon as he got elected, all this started, to wipe out the other 3 to 4 major cartels that would not launder all their money through U.S. and international banks. Now, by the way, that's in Bloomberg and AP. I'm going to go over all these headlines. Giving you the basics now. I'm going to walk through all of it. And so I watched all this unfold, exactly as he said it would unfold. Gary Webb was working on that. They went to his house, shotgunned him twice in the back of the head. I want you to know I'm risking my life even giving this information. $500 billion a year in cocaine and heroin come into this country. It's all laundered by the big 6 banks on record. Private Federal Reserve has been caught repeatedly with hundreds of billions in cash. They're allowed to keep it all. Doesn't matter. You're going, but wait, the cops go to big links to get the drugs. Drugs were legal till the 30s. You could buy heroin, cocaine, opium, anything you wanted at a corner drugstore. Drug use was much lower, even though Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. I mean, they had it all right down at the corner drugstore. And the prohibition had ended, which the big establishment made illegal so they could make huge profits, corrupt the police, some cases 100 times what they were making before alcohol was illegal. Knocked out all their competition, then only the insiders could bring in alcohol. Some of the greatest fortunes ever, including the Kennedy fortunes, were made out of that. Kennedy's, of course, Joe Kennedy, head of the Irish Mafia on the East Coast. Chicago delivered the election to him through the Dailies, other Irish. But the issue, and this is all mainline history, go pull it up. They made alcohol illegal for a decade to take control of the market. There were hundreds of breweries then, hundreds of whiskey makers then. For decades after Prohibition, there were only a few. Now, when that ended, they had to make narcotics illegal to have something new. The big major international importers make it illegal. They control the major cities, the major distributors. Now that massively rises the price of all of their commodities. Heroin, cocaine, the list goes on and on. They bring it in. They corrupt the police further. They control the criminal networks. They control the muscle. They shut down all of their competition. They take the low-level users and give them long sentences in privately owned banks, privately owned prisons owned by... Go look at who owns the big main chains of mega prisons. We have more prisons than anywhere else in the world, more drug use than anywhere else in the world. We're number one. The people then who get caught using the drugs that were shipped in at the top of the chain, who go rob stereos and the rest of it that goes right back to the banks, they then get put in a bank-owned private prison working as slave labor for 25 cents an hour, displacing everybody else's jobs. I mean, you think the illegals drive down wages. And so the globalists are masters at making money on both ends. Now, I'm going to go over the total proof of this when we come back on the other side. Foreign banks run America, and they run the drugs. They run everything, including the white slaves. You know, I grew up in Rockwall, Texas. My last few years of high school were here in Austin. We had to move down here because the police, through a lawyer, called and told my dad that if we didn't move out of town, they were going to arrest me and hang me in the jail cell because I didn't use drugs. I did drink some, not a lot, but, you know, at parties and chew tobacco and things like that because I was more of a jock. But I saw the police at parties over the years. I saw police deliver drugs. Congressman says unlikely Holder did not know about Operation Fast and Furious. Yeah, now it's come out in the Associated Press that FBI and DEA were involved in the, quote, Justice Department operation. Continuing, at least 40 killed in Mexico in 24-hour period. Houston Chronicle. Oh, here it is, Bloomberg. Banks financing Mexico gangs admitted in Wells Fargo deal. And it's admitted that in a 2-year period, Wells Fargo and its owner, Wachovia and its owner, Wells Fargo, laundered $376 billion and leased and ran the aircraft. Well, we already knew that. Oh, Reuters back in 2007, and you can pull up the headline, CIA torture jet wrecks with 4 tons of cocaine. It was pure cocaine coming directly from the source. National security is a great way to operate. And see, when some other group, the Colombians, don't pay their cut. I remember in 1999, Richard Grasso, the head of the New York Stock Exchange at the time, in Reuters, again, Reuters, went and met with the head of the FARC guerrillas in Colombia and, quote, encouraged him to invest his money. And it said a little-known loophole allows this. Oh, yeah, just like the big banks write the loopholes where they pay 0 tax. Google pays 2.4. General Electric, 0. They write all the laws. They tax you, then pay the money themselves. Continuing, and they told the head of the FARC, you invest with us or we're going to invade. He said no. U.S. military invaded. Go look it up. Wasn't called a war, called drug interdiction. And they have GPS airplanes spraying the coca fields that aren't owned and run by their drug dealers. And then, of course, they bombed with some Hellfire missiles and killed the head of the FARC. And they said, we taught you, boy, you invest with us or you die. And the American people are so gullible and so naive that it's just all admitted out in the open. Because even of the children, that's how we're seen as cattle-like children, we're to read that. We don't know what we're reading. We don't understand it. Ha, 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 ha. It's so funny. Now, continuing here, Eric Holder should go directly to prison. He should be indicted for lying under oath to Congress. It's a felony. The head of the ATF got caught lying when the emails came out. They were running the whole operation. He was going to get burned, so he's saying, look, I was under the orders of Eric Holder. Now the FBI, it's admitted, is involved. DEA, of course they are. My DEA source told us this 6 years ago. They sent in Los Zetas on record. They said, oh, thousands of Los Zetas, Mexican commandos, were trained at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then in mass, the week Calderon was elected, we told you about this 6 months before, the week after he was elected, they defect in mass and start their own cartel on the Texas border with the U.S. government arming them. Now confirmed. We told you this 6 years ago. Told you it was coming 6 years ago, happened 5 years ago. The videos are all posted on Infowars.com and on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. We've reposted those. Well, they've never been removed. You see the timestamp date, and there they are. Interviewing Solo Castillo in studio and others. Just told you everything that was happening. So the Pentagon trains these brigades of Mexican troops. They defect. And now the Mexican government's gotten second thoughts and is starting to arrest some of them because it turns out the people that run our government, I don't want to say U.S. government, the criminal banks that run our country through the military-industrial complex started having Los Zetas kill even Mexican officials that were supposedly part of the deal. So there's a double cross there. The bankers always double cross. So it's now in the news in major Mexican newspapers and in U.S. papers, and we've got it all boiled down. Larry Pratt, Gunners of America, sent us all their intel on Friday. We put it in the article. Los Zetas Kingpin. We bought guns directly from U.S. government. And I have the Gunners of America analysis that they sent to us to publish. It's all right there. You want to go read a 6-page report with everything detailed, Reuters, AP, all hidden in plain view. Go read it. Go read it. Go read it. Go read it. It's right there for everybody. Now, I want to go over more of this, but we're going to break here. How long do we go to break? A minute or two? Minute and a half. Let's go ahead first and play an ABC News clip. Let's play an ABC News clip from a year and a half ago where they spin the fact that our troops are helping grow the opium in Afghanistan. Stay there. We're going to come back. This is all a whitewash. I'm going to break down the facts for you in one moment. We're in Afghanistan for the 500 bill in schmack coming to your daughter's veins. And if they catch her using it, they'll put her in a private banker-owned prison. Stay with us. By the way, my friends, I haven't even gotten into the meat and potatoes news yet. But if you studied history, you'd know that the Roosevelt family, the Forbes family, the Rockefeller family. Rockefeller started out, the dad of the supposed big founder, John D. Rockefeller, was a snake oil salesman who sold laudanum in the backs of buggies. You know, the guys that get up and say, this will cure all your ails, grow your hair back, fix a broken leg. He was the first guy to launch fleets of those under a company name. So the issue is, the drug dealers just made the stuff illegal in the 30s to then jack up prices. And it goes back 300 years ago to the British couldn't get into China. And so the Chinese wouldn't allow them to sell Indian opium into the country. They only allowed the British to come into one port. It took them over 100 years to corrupt the police and take over most of the major cities by bringing in the illegal drugs. And they learned that by the government keeping it illegal, that allowed them to make even bigger profits and take over the criminal networks. And they had two wars in the 1900s or 1800s, 1840s, 1860s, called the Opium Wars or the Boxer Rebellion. This is mainline history. Total gun ban in Mexico. When you have that, the people can't defend themselves, only the criminals can operate. Now these Los Zetas people, when they get caught, another got caught in Chicago a few months ago, Chicago Tribune, another top Los Zetas guy, and he came out with documents in federal court saying, I work for the U.S. government. Release me. It isn't the U.S. government. It's the criminals working inside the national security state. And now they're coming after your guns. They're shifting the drug war to the gun war against our Second Amendment. So we can live like the poor slaves in Mexico who don't have a right to defend themselves, and only the criminals have the guns. There's been over 30,000 dead in the last 2.5 years in Mexico. That's more than died each year in Vietnam. Over a decade in Vietnam, we lost 58,000. In just a couple years, 30+ thousand and growing. And now it came out this week in the news, in the Phoenix paper and others, that cops have been killed with these 30,000 guns. The cops are stopping cars with these guns in them, with criminal drug dealers driving them. Of course. Oh, I forgot to print this off. Guys, can you search it? It was in a bunch of New Mexico papers, but didn't make it nationally. U.S. attorneys to drop prosecution of officials running guns. Mayors of major cities in New Mexico. What was one of them? Columbus? Police chiefs running guns, and they've declared national security, and the U.S. attorneys in West Texas and New Mexico, it's a whole bunch of towns involved, are having to drop the prosecution. They cannot prosecute them because they went ahead and said, do you understand I'm running an operation for the U.S. government? I mean, these people get away with blood. Folks, don't believe me. Just look all this stuff up. Look it up for yourself. Somebody's got to call shenanigans on this. Somebody, because here's the deal. They're getting more and more bold. They're getting more and more crazy. Okay, let's finish those video clips. Now, first ABC whitewashes that, since they damaged their crop, they paid for it. Then they cut into the fact that they're actually helping them grow it. Again, they're just going public with something that's always happened. But so many troops were coming home. Well, some tried to. The NFL star wrote letters home about the opium when it wasn't known. We knew. And, of course, he got killed. It's now come out, executed.